guys, we're into chapter 7, Ancient Greece, lesson 2, Sparta and Athens. And it matters because the city-states of Athens and Sparta had two very different governments, and Athenian democracy strongly influenced later forms of democracy. You're going to have 2 pages of video notes for this, and there is something at the end that you need to write in, so make sure you listen all the way to the end and write in what Miss Hodges tells you. Let's get right in there, guys. Oh, how cute it wiggled. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, many types of government. In ancient Greece, the struggle for power and control of city-states led to many different types of government. So I think I'm going to take my little camera right up here and move you up here so you can see them all. Is that better? I think so. Okay. So we're going to start with monarchy. The earliest Greek polises were controlled by monarchs or hereditary kings. So I'm going to see if I can, I can write on it. So what I want you to write in here is this is through inheritance. So that's inheritance. Okay, inheritance. So when you think of inheritance, you need to think of that bloodline. This is where you have the grandfather who's king. When he dies, his son becomes king. When he dies, his son becomes king. Then we have an oligarchy. In some city-states, a few wealthy people held the power over the entire polis. So let's put some dollar signs by this so we remember it's a few wealthy, and few means possibly 3 to 10 people. Okay, so you've got 3 to 10 people. So I want you to write few above oligarchy. Few can mean 3 to 10, and they are wealthy individuals that can come in and take power over the entire polis. Then we have a tyranny. Some tyrants or powerful and popular military leaders with support of the citizens overthrow the kings. So this is where you have one person in power, and he comes into power because he's got that military, see that muscle? Military force behind him, okay? Then we go to a democracy. By about 330 BC, some city-states were democracies where all citizens shared in running the government. So what I want you to write in here is all people. This is all people having what? A voice. Write that down at the bottom. All people have a voice in government. Guys, I cannot stress to you how important it is for you to have all 4 forms of these governments in the P section of grapes. And you need to describe how each type of government is run and who runs it. Okay? One other thing I want you to remember about the 4 forms of government is that they can change. Just because a city-state has one form of government doesn't mean that something can't happen or people can't vote or that military can't come in with that one leader and take over. All of the forms of government can change depending on the situation. Okay, guys, Mr. Kennedy is going to come in and talk to you about Sparta. Bye.
Well, thank you, Ms. Tickle. Here's Mr. Kennedy. I'm going to talk to you guys about Sparta. So one of the most famous, I say in my opinion, probably city-states of ancient Greece is going to be the Spartan society. Thank you, Ms. Tickle. So I think that's out of the way. So here we have Sparta, which is a military society. Sparta was an oligarchy. Ms. Tickle just explained what an oligarchy is. That's going to be the power by a few. And the invading neighboring city-states enslaved the local people. Up to 2/3 of the population of Sparta were Heliots or slaves. So that's the word we use for slaves in Sparta. You can see that that's actually a majority of the population. That's 2/3 of people. They were outnumbered by the slaves in ancient Sparta. We're going to see why that's significant here in a second. In around 650 BC, the Heliots rebelled. The Spartans crushed the rebellion and prevented future rebellions by making Sparta a military society. So although Sparta was already a military society, they increased their control because they just had a rebellion. I mean, 2/3 of the people rebelled. So they're going to make it a little bit more strict. And we're going to see, kind of why we know the Spartans and how strong and powerful they really were here in the next slide. So Remember that the Heliots had a majority of the population being 2/3. Those were the slaves in Sparta. So here we have some differences between the Spartans, boys and men, and the girls and women. I want you guys to take a look real quick, see if this works at just a second. The life of a Spartan soldier. So these right here would kind of have their age ranges right here. They had intense physical training around the age of 12 to 18, and then their military training is really going to start at age 20. At age 30, they're finally going to gain full citizenship. Soldiers could now participate in the assembly and move back home. So let's take a look at the differences between boys and men and girls and women. Unhealthy babies were left outside the city to die just because they seemed unfit for military service. And Spartan boys would leave home at age 7 to go to military school where they were treated very harshly. Men were required to stay in the military until age 60. Wow. And now we're going to take a look at the Spartan girls and the women, who are actually going to be very important in Spartan military society. The girls had many more rights than most of the women in the ancient world. They could actually own property and train in sports. And they're even going to run their own households. So Spartan women are going to be very important for owning property and running the households. And the main goal of the women was really to raise strong and brave Spartan soldiers. So that's going to be a big responsibility for these women to make sure that they're still around to raise these next generation of strong Spartan soldiers. So in a second, we're going to take a look at sometimes our allies, sometimes our enemies, which are going to be the Athenians by Miss Hodges. So bye, guys. Those are the Spartans for you.
All right, so let's talk about Athens. The two main city-states that we want to talk about are Athens and Sparta. And Ms. Tickle talked about how governments could change, and we call that fluid, meaning it can flow from one to the next. And so Athens is a place where we're really going to see governments changing and governments evolving and governments changing who's in charge. So when you think in terms of government, you should always think of who has the power and how did they get that? And then what do they do with it? So who has power? How do they get it? And what do they do with it? And Athens starts out as a monarchy, which means that's a rule by inheritance. And they have one person ruling in terms of a king. And the king is not always going to make the best decisions. He doesn't always have enough information, and sometimes he has bad advisors. So there starts to become some tension in the Athens polis. And between the rich citizens and the poor farmers leads to lots of tension. The farmers feel like they don't have enough say in their government, and people are making rules for them that they don't get to have a part of, but yet they have to follow those, but yet they're doing all the work for that. So that is a problem for them. And it's going to lead to changes. So we're going to move through our timeline, and if you look, it is counting down. It is BC. We are going closer to AD, and so our numbers are getting smaller. And so we're going to look at some people that were instrumental in these changes that are made. Oh, look, I'm going to be like the guy from the video from class. You know, it's like, hey, wait, that hair's out of place. There. Whoa. That's better. No, it's not. Okay. It's just going to have to stay that way. So Solon, we want to look at him. He's a respected merchant. So he's one of the richer people. And the nobles are looking to him for leadership. He's going to end the debts that the farmers have and open the assembly to all citizens. So even though the farmers may have owned some land and they were rich, they were land-owning men who were born in Athens and they were citizens, they didn't have enough say in their government. And Solon tries to make them have a bigger voice and tries to introduce some reforms to make them come into the government a little more actively. It works for a little while, but it doesn't work forever. So this is the beginnings that we see of a democracy where more people can come to the assembly and make their voices known. We're not at a democracy yet, though.
Teachers and students at this time.
After Solon tried that, Pisistratus comes on, and he is a tyrant. Now, tyrants are not always bad. Tyrants can come in and help out the people who didn't own land. And they can come in and help people who feel like they're being trampled on by their government. And in this case, Pisistratus is amazing. They love him because the people are being mistreated by the rich folks, and so the poor farmers need more say in their government, and Pisistratus provides that for them. So a tyrant is anyone who seizes power. Remember the guy that was really strong that Ms. Tickle talked about? Pisistratus is a great tyrant that they really like and they respect him, and he comes in, he takes over the government with the military behind him, and he gives citizenship to people who don't own land because they felt like, hey, I've been born in Athens and I should be able to be in the government. Even though I don't own land, I should have a part in government. And so he gives that to them. He gives them a right to come down to the assembly and to talk and to help pass laws. And so that's the even one step closer to a democracy, which Callisthenes comes in next. He is the father of democracy. So we're going to do a little silly thing. Callisthenes, father of democracy. And when we get in class, we're actually going to touch our knees and do that kind of silly thing. But remember, those silly things help you remember these and get this right on the test. So Callisthenes is the father of democracy, and he is going to make the assembly the governing body. So now not just one person is making laws, the assembly is going to make the laws. And he creates a council of 500 citizens who can be randomly chosen from all citizens to come in and help make the laws. This is getting closer to everyone having a say in the government. And Callisthenes is the father of democracy. And one of the reforms he makes is to do that for the Greek people. So then what is life like for everybody else in Greece? We have the Athens is a young democracy. It's just getting started, a little fledgling democracy. So in Athens, wealthy boys are going to get sent to school to improve their body and their mind. Poor boys get to stay home and do farming and things like that. Wealthy boys were allowed to become soldiers, government officials, while poor boys usually became farmers. Now, there's still not a lot of farmland, and so everybody is trying. That's why people start to serve in the army, because not everybody can be a farmer. There's not enough farmland. So the Athens military is very strong. They are not the strongest military, though. Sparta is with Mr. Kennedy. He was the strongest one. Girls in Athens are allowed to stay home, be educated by their mothers. They are taught spinning and weaving and other household chores. They are not even really taught to read and write like the Spartan women are. The Spartan women needed that because the men were gone off to war. But here, war is not as much of a focus, and so women stay home and take care of the household. They were not allowed to leave the house except on special occasions, so they would have stayed at home almost all the time. And they could not own property, and they did not have any legal rights, so they were not allowed to vote. So we're looking at that. One thing we need to add, though, about Athens, we need to write this in. Athens has a strong navy because they are located closer to the sea. They're located closer to that Aegean Sea to the east. And they had all kinds of trade routes going on, and so they built a very strong navy, while Sparta has a very strong army. Now, there is not a spot to fill this in on your notes. This is exactly what we wanted you to write in. It's got a spot right below. There's a blank space. So write that in right there. Athens has a strong navy, and Sparta has a strong army. And that is going to make a huge difference when these two city-states finally decide, you know what, we're tired of being friends. We're going to fight a little bit. We're going to talk about that in the Peloponnesian Wars. So we're setting ourselves up to have two very different city-states, two very different policies, octopi, octopus, I'm not sure, two polis, and they're setting them up to have a conflict because they value such different things, and because they have a different way of living their life, they are actually going to come to blows, and they're going to have a fight. We're going to call that the Peloponnesian War because it's actually fought mostly on the Peloponnesus. There you go. All right, so finishing all your notes. There's not a hot question on this, so you can be sure to expect a video notes check. Giving you a warning, heads up. All right. Oh no, Mr. Kennedy is on it. So that's what we're taking care of. All right, guys. Love you. Make good choices, and we'll see you in class. Oh, there's a strong Navy and strong Army. There you go. Should have brought that up for you. There's Navy, trireme. There's the Army with the phalanx. We'll talk about all those later, too. See ya tomorrow.